What is up, world? It's your boy Tan, and you are listening to the Wonton Wealth Podcast. Here, I'm going to unravel anything and everything commercial real estate related. And more importantly, we're going to add abundant value. So if you're ready, buckle up your eardrums. Well, Pat fucking Hiban is on the podcast today. If you don't know who Pat Hiban is, I think you have been living under a rock, because Pat is literally the OG of real estate. And Pat, I don't want to butcher your background, your story. So if you could, why don't you give the audience a little bit of a background about who Pat Hiban is and what you're currently doing?
Wow, like who am I? It really, I guess, whenever you do this right, it's kind of like, who was I? Sometimes I feel like I've lived a couple of lives. Um, but yeah, who was I? Grew up in Columbia, Maryland, which is a suburb of Baltimore, right between Baltimore and Washington. Um, from a young age, I was always entrepreneurial in spirit, or just in work ethic. I would say I was entrepreneurial. And that just means I guess when you say in work ethic, meaning I always worked harder than everybody else, or didn't have a problem working harder because it meant more money and I wanted more money. And I've always liked money, and I've always loved counting money and making more money. And I never had a real guilt about it. Um, and so, yeah, I went to college. I got a degree in sociology. I really didn't know what I was going to do with that. I didn't do anything with it. I got into real estate sales. I was in real estate sales for 25 years. Worked my way up through 5 different companies. Real estate agents jump around a lot. Jumped around, rung the bell as like the number one agent at several large companies. Wrote a book about how other people could do the same thing. Got out of that business. Moved down south to South Carolina, and started probably 12 new companies, of which about 10 failed, and 2 succeeded. The 2 that succeeded were GoBundance, which is a mastermind that we're in together, that's basically high achieving, successful entrepreneurs helping each other out. And then DAPT Acquisitions, which is a company that invests in multifamily apartments in suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. We have about over 2,000 units now that we rent out. Yeah, I have 2 kids. They're in their late 20s. They're both engaged to be married. And I have a beautiful wife of 32 years, and that's my bio there.
I think that's actually the tip of the iceberg with Pat. So we're going to dissect a little bit more, because I've read Pat's book. His first book was 7 Steps to Six Figures. Is that right?
Yeah, 6 steps to 7 figures. Yep.
6 Steps to 7 Figures. My apologies.
Yeah, no problem.
So the first time I actually met Pat, it was actually at a GoBundance event. We were having dinner with a bunch of GoBundance guys. And full disclosure, I'm actually not part of GoBundance. Somehow I was just kind of there. And Pat sat next to me, and we were just talking about, I don't know, we were bullshitting, having a drink, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, or at the end of the dinner there, we actually exchanged contact information. I said, "Hey, Pat, you mind if I get your last name? I like having first and last names in my phone." And he spelled it out for me, and I said, "Hold the fuck on. Hiban, like the Pat Hiban? Like the one that wrote the
6
Six
steps.
Steps to 7 Figures?"
Yeah.
He goes, "Yep, that's me." I'm like, "No fucking way." Because
Well, that's the bigger pockets thing, I think, right? Yeah.
I forget. Yeah, it was at the Bigger Pockets thing. That was
Yeah,
right.
and then I saw you at coffee the next day or something like that.
Yep.
Or we met
Yep.
for coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was literally one of the first real estate books that I've read in my journey to learning about real estate. So I have a little bit of tidbits that I know about Pat that wasn't shared with you guys, nor me in particular. But so Pat, in the beginning, you were like the number one real estate agent with Remax, right? Or I don't
Yeah,
remember what company
Remax.
it was.
Remax is I was at Remax 15 years, and I was always like, on the cutting edge of like teams. I had somebody come up to me one time and said, "Oh, I know about you. You're the first guy that started Teams." And I was like, no, I did not start. I wasn't the first guy that started teams. I actually got the idea from another agent from another state that I went to at a Remax convention, and I saw they had, hired like 5 assistants instead of just one assistant. And but I was one of the early adopters of teams. I would say, in the first 1% for sure, rode a big wave as being one of the first teams in our areas and one of the fastest growing teams in our areas. Now every damn real estate agent has a team. You know what I mean? They sell 18 houses a year and they have 17 people on the team. Back then, it was a lot different. We had mandatory minimums, like you had to sell 2 houses a month or you got fired, sort of thing. It was a very highly intensive, highly accountable team. Very different than how they are today. But yeah, so that was it.
I mean, you were the pioneer there, right? And
Yeah, I guess you could say that I was a pioneer.
yeah, and if I remember, it was like some astronomical number of homes or volume size that you sold back then. It was like a billion, maybe somewhere around
Yeah,
there.
well, and again, everything like gets every record or what have you gets exploded, right? Like just because the mind explodes and the perception explodes, and it was 20 years ago, but yeah, like so, we were doing 500 units a year, and that was crazy back then. Like no, people did like 40, and the next closest was maybe 60, and then we did 500. But now these teams are doing 10,000 homes a year because they're in like 8 states and all this other shit. We were just in our hometown minding our own business, hyper focused. We were hyper focused for sure. Yeah, so anyways, yeah, we
But
were
you
we had a lot of
essentially,
fun.
yeah, you essentially gave out or you laid out the recipe for success that everybody kind of copied and
Amplified.
and amplified. Correct.
Yeah.
Without that, I guess recipe, everybody else probably wouldn't have been able to get to where they are today.
Yeah, to a little bit. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I would, if someone had said to me back then, hey, I was in Maryland. So if someone said, hey, open a office in Pennsylvania and open one in Virginia and open one in West Virginia and open one here, I'll be like, no way, man. My mind doesn't think that big. But now, if I had to start all over again, I'd probably do that in 2 or 3 years. You know what I mean? Just because other people are doing it. So why not?
Yeah, yeah. So you went from a real estate agent and then you transitioned into starting these 12 companies like you mentioned. 10
Mm-hmm.
of them failed, 2 of them succeeded, one of them
Mm-hmm.
being GoBundance and the other one was the multifamily company, right?
Correct.
What made you transition into starting those other 12 companies? And I guess any big lessons there from the 10 that failed?
The big lesson from the 10 that failed was the juice has to be worth the squeeze. And by that I mean the juice is money, it's profit. The squeeze is the amount of work. I started a lot of shit that had a lot of squeeze that was hard work, and I just couldn't get the profit margin high enough. And so I quit, or closed it down and just said it failed. It didn't work. I think I was spoiled as a real estate agent because if you think about it, real estate agents, and this is actually one of the reasons I got into real estate and stayed in it because, I got in when I was 21 years old. Um, at 21 years old, you could sell 6 houses a year and survive, right? Pay rent. I made $13,000 my first year, and paid rent with that, like rented a room, one room out of with like 4 other people in the house, and because there was a lot of juice. Every house you sold was like 5 to 20 grand. Back then it might have been 3 grand, 4 grand, but now it's some of the they sell $1 million house, you make 30,000 or 20,000 or whatever, and of course that's getting squeezed. But the point is, you make a lot. It's very, very, very lucrative, and I was spoiled with that. So then when I go from that and try to do things and only make $500 a month or whatever, it's like this is ridiculous. So yeah, I was kind of spoiled with that, and I found that by getting into multifamily, it was a good time to get in. We got in like 2012. We started buying them, and by getting into a mastermind group, that had a high barrier to entry, meaning right now our membership dues are 10,000 for GoBundance. Then we have a champions division, which is 15,000. There's a lot of room in there for profit and to really make the engine go to build something incredible. When you just like my real estate team, with there was enough profit in the commissions that we were able to just build this astronomical team and really do some fun stuff. And I could say the same thing with GoBundance and the same thing with DAPT acquisitions, where we bought one apartment building and now we have 10. We've probably sold 7 or 8. So those all flowed well because of the profit margin. Of these 10 other businesses that failed, getting back to your questions, the profit margin just wasn't big enough to keep it afloat. So it's something to think about. Like, whatever business you get into, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, get into something that's going to pay a lot of money if it succeeds, not something that's only going to trickle like a dollar a customer or something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The margins have to be there. The energy that you put in has to be worth the profits.
Yeah, and some of these companies, I was selling things, buy this for $59 or buy this for, $20 a month, and it just wasn't added up. The only way, a few people can really kill it that way, but very few people are killing it, say on YouTube or through selling products and coaching and things like that. It's very hard to do on a high level.
So if we were to, let's say, find 10 different opportunities out there where margins are roughly 30-40%, and
Uh-huh.
let's say not just from a percentage standpoint but also from a dollar perspective, that it's bringing in, call it 5-10,000 per client or whatever, right? Would that be something you would still jump into?
Yeah, yeah,
Or
of course, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
so as long as the margins and the money are there?
Yeah,
I love it. I
that's
love it.
just the lesson.
Okay. So you also mentioned you co-founded GoBundance,
Correct.
and I guess a lot of people probably don't know this either, but Pat also wrote a second book called Tribe of Millionaires, which is
Uh-huh.
also one of my favorite books because it is a fable. It's a story, a fictional story about GoBundance, if you will. So Pat, when you co-authored Tribe of Millionaires, and I can't remember the other authors here, but what was the I guess the inspiration behind it, and why do it as a fable versus like just, well, I guess it kind of had to be a fable to tell about
Well,
GoBundance.
yeah, we kind of wanted the message to get across. I wasn't a fan of fables because I always felt like, the books I read now are memoirs. They're true stories. The stuff I watch on TV, I tend to watch some fictional stuff, but 90% of the stuff I watch is like documentaries, true crime, like just stuff like that. And but I realize that's just me personally. A lot of the world loves fiction and loves you know, that sort of thing. So what we did is we had a ghostwriter, Dan Clements. We were having a GoBundance event in Japan, and he's like, "How about I come to Japan as part of my fee, and I hang out with you guys in Japan and write the book, help you write the book." And I was like, "Okay." He goes, "I've never been to Japan. I'd like to check it out." I said, "Okay, cool." So he actually came and spent like a week or so with probably 20 of our members, and we would take bus rides from here to there, and he would sit next to a member. He'd interview him, and then the next day he would have dinner with another member, and the next day he'd have breakfast with another member, and he created the characters of the fable from interviewing about 20 members in Japan when we went. So like one of the characters might be the merger of 3 different real people.
Incredible. I mean, I love the book. It's very similar to The Go Giver, which is also another favorite book of mine.
Uh-huh.
And GoBundance in general, for people that don't know, and Pat's already alluded to it, the starting membership is around 10 grand a year, and then there's a championship sector that's 15,000 a year of all high net worth individuals, entrepreneurs who are go getters essentially. So Pat, I wanted to focus in a little bit on the GoBundance piece of it. Uh, you co-founded it, and it's about, if I remember correctly, wealth, health, and abundance. What inspired you and your co-founder or co-founders to create it, and how has GoBundance impacted your life so far?
Well, it's kind of like the original. GoBundance was really truly an organic thing, which kind of makes it even so much more awesome because you don't have to lie and say it was just destiny or whatever. It really wasn't conscious at all. It was like I met David Osborne at another event. His strong suit was horizontal income. My strong suit was accountability. Then we met Tim Rode at another event, different event, completely different event, a different town, completely different group of people. Coincidentally, through serendipity, his strong suit was health. And then we met Mike McCarthy and Matt King and the rest of the ownership team at different just serendipitous occurrences. And we were able to take Tim's focus on health and say that really should be a pillar. It shouldn't be all about money or all about accountability. It should also be on health. And then Mike McCarthy's, genius zone lies in family. He's hyper vigilant about spending time with his wife and kids and creating legacy for his family and that sort of thing. And so we're like, well, we should add family, deep relationships to it. And we came up with our pillars that way, just based on what we all loved. Yet at the same time, we all loved all the other pillars too. We all loved making money and we all loved investing and that sort of thing. So it was really like a natural thing that occurred. And little did we know that other people wanted to hang out with us and talk about the same things. And that's kind of how we went from just 4 or 5 of us to, well over 1,000 today. And we're all the same. We're all like these lone wolves that have found their pack.
And if it were told to me correctly, GoBundance has a lot of like events, pods, if you will, with many, just probably 10, 20 people or so within a pod. They get to know each other super well. And you guys do a ton of these events, right? So what has been, I guess, one of the craziest events that you've done, and or I guess some of the stories within GoBundance that has been life-changing?
Crazy. So the word is crazy. We went to Vietnam. One of the coolest things, we went to Vietnam and we rode motorcycles. I remember when we got there, like we had this whole thing set up and they came and they're like, hey, no. You guys can't ride these on your own. You got to have a guy here ride with you. There's like 25 of us. And we're like, hell no. We're not, riding with some random dude. Like it was like all day. It was like a 10-hour bike thing. We went all over the place and all along the coast of Vietnam. And we're like, hell no, this is not what we paid for. We refuse to do it. And then they said, okay, fine, we'll give you all these motorcycles. So they gave us like 25 motorcycles and we rode these things and we rode them on highways. And then we rode them on like trails that were like 3 feet wide with people walking with, just like in the movies, with stuff on their backs and the big hats and everything. And like, we had to stop and rode through cemeteries and rode through just amazing different parts of the country. And for like all day. And like we didn't get it. We started at like 8 in the morning, got in at 8 at night. And it was just insane and so beautiful. And I think that was one of the really coolest things we did. And we've done a lot of stuff like that. We're getting ready to go to Poland in September. And, we're going to go to I don't even know what it is. I don't know if it's rugby or some form of some mix between rugby, soccer, and football. That's how they always do them, right? Like, but it's like the stands are packed. The thing is sold out. People are like bouncing off each other and throwing beer on each other and screaming and dancing. I mean, I've seen videos of it. I'm like, oh man, I got to do that. That looks awesome. So there's a lot of crazy things that we do, but that's just the international ones. At all of our regular events, we play broom ball, which is, a form of hockey with shoes on. We play ultimate frisbee, which is a great game. We do snowmobiling, snowshoeing, powder cat, regular skiing, whatever you fancy. We have multiple activities. So basically what our culture is we do a lot of activities during the day. Get outside, as Tim Rowe would say, get the goods in the woods, whether it's hiking, or playing. And then at night we have masterminds we bring in guest speakers, and we then talk about what the guest speakers have to say. We got one coming up in Banff, Canada. And we'll probably end up, it's in October, so we'll probably end up hiking, and we've got some incredible best-selling authors and things like that lined up for that, so that's going to be really good.
I love it. That's incredible. And so I'm Vietnamese, and I was actually back in Vietnam. We're in April of 25, February of 24 to March of 24. So I was there for roughly 5 weeks.
Mm.
I gotta say,
Wow.
I gotta say, you riding the mopeds or the scooters or whatever,
They
are
were motorcycles, dude. They were like dirt bikes, you know what I mean?
real. Oh, okay, okay.
They were
Because
like real motorcycles. Like we didn't have to have international licenses or nothing. Like they
the
were
the
dirt bikes.
the traffic over there is absolutely terrifying to me. Like just walking the streets, I'm like, dude, I don't even know. Like you just kind of just walk across. There's no like lights or anything, and the traffic just goes. So
You have to. It's a total defensive driving culture. I was amazed. We did this thing where we would like walk across with our arms at our side and just look straight and just walk, and all the motorcycles and cars and bicycles and things would just go all around you. None of them would like plow you down because they're
right,
all going on defense. And it's just crazy. It's like they repel from you. In the United States, of course, you do that and they would just hit you.
they're gone.
They're not raised, and they're not taught how to drive to be defensive. It's all offense, and then just the poor pedestrians just plowed down. But they're all defensive. It's like zing, zoop, 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 and that's how they drive.
Well, you also mentioned within GoBundance that health is a big factor. A lot of people like to stay active, playing all these games and whatnot. So I like to ask all the successful people that I know, what is one daily habit or ritual that you try to focus on to, I guess, stay healthy and or motivated within business?
Yeah, that's great. Just keep. What comes to mind is just keep talking about it. It's kind of like going on a podcast with you. The more you talk about it, the more you want. The more you hear about it, the more you want to do it. Even listening to podcasts and things like that, the more you like. Literally, I listened to a podcast this morning, right? Because the stock market crashed yesterday.
Yep.
And this guy at a stock market, this podcast, Animal Spirits, and then the thing said, "Stock market crashed yesterday. What to do about it today?" And I'm like, okay, let me listen to that. And then I listened to that, and then I immediately called up my broker and I said, okay, what are we going to do? This is what I heard. You know what I mean? And my point is that if I'm listening to that and I'm paying attention to that, or I'm talking to you about multifamily or whatever, how you're buying commercial office or whatever, it's going to keep the blood flowing in my brain to think about that for myself as well. So I think the answer to the question is just keep talking and keep listening.
So it's more so the environment you're surrounded by or forcibly putting yourself into.
Yeah, right.
Got it.
That's just gonna, and then it only makes sense to do what you think about all the time.
Got it. Got it. So, with everything you've done in GoBundance and all the activities that all the members are part of, it sounds like there's a ton of shit going on, right? So, how are you balancing all of that stuff with family? And I know one of the pillars is family, but there's only so many hours in the day. So, how do you continually spend X amount of time with the family and then Y amount of time building the empire?
I think it's on illusion really, because I only work like 2 hours a day on average, but it wasn't always like that. But even when I was working 60 hours a day, the illusion was I was working 120. 60 hours a week. Having good, you always just gotta constantly replace yourself and constantly hire really, really good people. I mean, it's a cliche, but it's true. You gotta always, fire yourself from all your own jobs. Eventually, that's the goal. That's the only thing that's going to allow you to have multiple businesses and have time,
So, who,
quality
not
time.
how, and delegation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. So I guess what values or virtues do you look at people that you see in people that qualifies for the perfect person for that position? or part of your team?
It's not as easy as it seems, but I think that you could probably narrow down 90% of the people out there in the first 5 minutes. You just know, they got to be sharp, they got to be astute, they got to be paying attention to what you're saying smart things, and taking action. In that first 5 or 10 minutes that you meet them, whether they're going to work or not is a different thing, and you could generally find that out, and you just can't be afraid to constantly move around and hire and fire. You know what I mean? You can't be afraid to be like, oh, what if I make a mistake? Just hire them, and if it doesn't work out, fire them.
Slow to hire, quick to fire, right?
Yeah, I say so.
Love it. Well, I'm looking for more advice for the audience here. You wrote two awesome books out there, two of my favorite books, if you will. For you personally, and obviously you can't say your books, for you personally, what's one book that you've either read in the past or recently that completely either blew your mind or you kind of live by the principles of that book today?
Well, of course, I could say the cliche classics, that a lot of people say. One of the But that being said, one of my favorite books is As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. I've probably read that 100 times. And I used to keep it in between my seats of my car and read it at stoplights and stuff. Just like a couple of sentences here, a couple of sentences there. Recently, what have I read recently? I read again, I like memoirs, but memoirs of successful people. Rich Paul wrote this book called Lucky Me, where he talks about how he hustled. He was a drug dealer, a very successful drug dealer. And then he met LeBron James in an airport by accident. And LeBron said to him, "Hey, nice jersey." And how he took that comment, "nice jersey," and turned it into like this $100 million career, and got out of making money the wrong way to making money the right way. I really enjoyed that book. It's called Lucky Me. There's another, Solve for Money is a really good book. Solve for Happy. I'm sorry, Solve for Happy, by Mo Gadot. It was a great book. I read it recently, and currently I'm reading The Five Levels of Wealth. No, The Five Levels of Wealth by Sahil Bloom. Really, really solid book. Very, extremely well written. Very solid book. So I think that's enough.
Love it. Love it. And have you started my book yet?
I did read some of it. I did.
I'm just teasing you. I guess the last question that I had for you was what's one thing that about you that most people don't know but would be surprised to learn?
I think that I'm not really talented. Like, it's weird. It's like I'm not really like, I was never really good at sports. I'm terrible at sports. And I'm very uncoordinated. I can't dance or anything. I don't see myself as being really intelligent. It's just, I like people. I just, I like people. I like networking. I connect a lot of dots when I meet people. And it's paid off for me. But the whole concept of, you got to be, my GPA at college was 2.3. The whole concept of, you got to be good physically or you got to be good mentally, I just think is just wrong. I mean, I don't know if people are surprised by that or not, but like, I'm not even good at like fixing shit around the house. My wife does all that stuff too. And all my neighbors are like, "Oh, you're not a man." I'm like, well, I don't care. I'm not good at that. Like I get IKEA is a nightmare to me. I'm like, I cannot buy anything from IKEA. The only thing I'll buy from IKEA is if you put it together and, ahead of time. And like, I just can't do that. I don't have the patience or frustration for that. Frustration level. So I guess that would be surprising there.
And obviously, as you guys have heard previously, Pat's also a very hard worker. I bet you if he was in any room, he'd be the hardest worker in that room. Anybody in the world included. Would you agree, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. In the moment, right? Yeah, for a project, I'm a very hard worker. I think you give me a project, I'm gonna go. I'm going to dig deep until it's done, right? I'm going to get it done. Like you give me a legal document that needs to be updated, or something that needs to be created, like a new form or something like that, or like you said, you put me in a room at an event and say, okay, you got to create this panel and you got to do this and that, and I'm going to bust my ass until it's over, right? Um,
Love that.
but yeah.
Yeah. Well, Pat, I appreciate your time coming on, brother. You're always an inspiration and a wealth of knowledge. If people wanted to find you and learn more about what you're doing in the multifamily space, where would they look?
The multifamily is DAPT Acquisitions, DAPT. That stands for David, Andrew, Pat, and Tim. Those are my three partners. DAPT Acquisitions .com. And that's the best place to find me. I mean, not really find me, but you can find me. You just Google my name. But I hope to be starting a Substack. I opened a Substack recently, and I want to start sending people there, but I haven't written anything yet. But that's my goal this year, is to start writing. And that's Substack.com /Pat Hiban, or whatever it is. You could just go into Substack and type my name. Eventually, that will be a place for people to quote unquote find me. Other than that, I'm not a big poster. I don't post a lot of shit. I just some personal family stuff once in a while, but I'm not not even on Twitter or any of that stuff.
Which is actually a good thing. Being a little bit outside of the social media, because it's a lot of noise now. So
Yeah.
And then the other place obviously would be GoBundance.
GoBundance, yeah. That's GoBundance.com. That's real easy. And if you're interested, just fill out an application and we'll get back to you.
And everyone tell Pat that Ton sent you, and hopefully Pat takes care of you.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
Well, yeah.
Just put it as the source.
Well, yeah, that's all I had for you, brother. Once again, I do appreciate your time. That was awesome, learning a little bit more about you and all the cool shit that you're doing. All right, brother.
All right, Tom. Great talking to you. Great seeing you again, man.
Likewise, brother.
I'll see you.
And that's a wrap. If you've made it this far, that means you've listened to the entire episode, so thank you. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And if you've learned something or found it useful, share it with one of your homies. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm pretty active on IG. My handle is pro_TANH. Reach out, let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, or what you want to hear about in the future. I'm here to tailor this to you. Until next time.